Cellular progenitors! This is internet personality Vangelus, and one of the first real moments I had in the first year of Transformers Legacy was the arrival of Voyager class Jhiaxus, neither orange, nor hunchbacked, nor skeletal in cheekbone. Hailing from the G2 universe, this unabashedly unshallow cut of a character poll has remained actively in hand around my apartment since I got him back in the year 2022. Jesus, back in the year 2022, what happened?
This video was sponsored in part by ToyHacks.com. Use the code LADIESMangelus through the month of February 2024 for 15% off your order of labels and other paraphernalia. Using the code supports the channel. Supporting the channel feeds the machine.
Seemingly designed from the ground up to represent the classic Derek Yoniger bulkined extremitus that graced the pages of Transformers Generation 2 Issue 1 back in the autumn of 1993, Legacy Jhiaxus has a powerful silhouette that immediately enthralled me as soon as I got him out of the package. I love these shapes and proportions, and I think they're an absolute necessity as far as getting the various bat wings and the brutish skull shape to work as a physical piece. Also, the use of horizontal panel lines to blend in the otherwise obvious tail fin halves on the inner calves is the kind of tiny bullet point that makes me let out a contented, smile emoji. The coloration is a very mixed bag for me though, as this combination of pearl white, pale yellow, goblin green, and stark red are anathema to nearly all of my aesthetic tastes. However, they are also very specifically the colors I wanted to see on a comic-style Jhiaxus. Would I like to get a redeco or two down the road? Yes, please! But this is the Buckley's cough syrup of a palette that comes with the G2 Universe version of the character. I think some kind of additional layer of grunge shading would have been a perfect cherry on top, and if I ever get a hold of a second copy to experiment on, maybe. Who knows? What I do know is that the head sculpt is perfect! Whatever the visual nasal unification force that approached the Prime Universe Legacy figures was, it fled at the sight of Jhiaxus' scowling glare, wide grimace, and hamburger nose. This is a portrait that brings me unadulterated joy every time I look at it and blow an involuntary kiss. And by way of the 90s, Jhiaxus comes with two guns. They're both his gun from the comic, one bulky and red, the other smaller, thinner, and inexplicably rendered as a literal shard of clear plastic with paint on it. They've got Evo Fusion 5mm connections aplenty, though as a contained experience that usually just means you slap the tiny one on the side of the big one. But hey, you can also pop them on his back. That big Derek Yoniger noggin is on a ball socket joint that gives it unforeseen levels of ovularity and emotion. Like this big square thing from the comic books tilting his head like this. Unforeseen to little young me, but here we are. The shoulders can do their usual things. They cannot quite T-pose unless you... well, no, they just can't quite T-pose. There's too much hunk in the way, but I'm okay with this level of range as long as there's other things going on, and there's a bicep swivel, there is a deep curl single hinge elbow, there is a wrist swivel, there's even a waist swivel, and they've got the thing I enjoy, the suck-in hip skirts for high kick action, almost able to go to the splits. Once again, he can't quite turn into an H, but he can turn into a very badly drawn the letter A. The thighs are able to swivel, the knees can curl super deep on a single hinge, makes me happy. The ankles can do just a little bit of pivoting from the side to side and the forward and back. This guy's lanky proportions, formidable head sculpt, and general articulation all coalesce into a satisfying pose and play experience for me on Jhiaxus. I'm okay with him not being able to go fully gymnastic just because he constantly is carrying an enormous amount of swagger in any kind of posture I put him in. He can even go like hands behind his back like I'm about to dark side on you, and it works. And that makes me happy with a Jhiaxus. There's even a pinned knuckle at the hands to open the fingers a bit, and as far as hands that are like born to be a fist that were given a knuckle, I think these turned out okay. I've seen worse, I've also seen better. That's starting to look a bit funny. A little bit too... You can even wiggle the winglets! It's more than I can say for the ones back here. They can pivot a little, or you can open them like that, but it's not the same. I'm a big fan of this transformation, mostly because the motions are almost all very satisfying to me, though the multi-layered reshaping of the torso is, small spoiler, the best part, making the remaining steps pale a bit in comparison. Like, it sure feels as though the arms are gonna do something wild when the shoulder lines fold inward, but I'm sure many of you know they're just gonna end up slung under the alt mode. There's a lot of work done in the legs, as is often the case with Transformers who turn into flying wing boxes, but I do like how many solid hand-feel tabs and slots are used to provide tactile satisfaction along the way. The main issue that tarnishes all of this is that when you fold down the wing assembly and move the legs in to complete that grand interconnection, it's not entirely clear what goes first. To its credit, everything kinda just sucks together, but it involves a little bit of ABS plastic torsion that seems somewhat unnecessary, as it's mostly to accommodate hiding a little bit of yellow on the insides of the kneecaps. However, it still works happily nearly 2 years later, so I should probably put a pin in it. I still love transforming this guy both ways, especially when even the underslung arms get a solid tab slot connection to add that needed note of extra satisfaction to the final motions. I love Cybertronian airborne alt modes. A lot of you don't, and that's totally valid. Go sit in the plastic chairs at the other end of my dinner table. Jhiaxus had a comically impossible jet mode in the original G2 comic, and seemed to lean even more into being a sweep in Regeneration 1, so I'm really digging this wing-boxed, seeker nose-coned stick rocket, underhunk and all. It's got obvious function and intent, which is one of the things I often look for on a Cybertronian vehicle mode. And you can smack the guns onto there however you feel most comfortable, though I'm not a fan of how the instructions want the red one to just protrude from under the nose cone, ruining the vibe for me. They also tell you to put the small one on in a way that could flex and break it. Actually, there aren't a lot of ports on here. However, at the 11th hour, I learned from the wiki that the front of Jhiaxus' shoulder thing can secretly 5mm detach. Not only does that allow the shoulder thing to fold away in robot mode, and thus more cleanly in alt mode, but you can fit that removed piece onto the back of the red gun, giving it a new front for what appears to be an intended vehicle mode placement. This is an exceptionally vague reference to one of the few comic panel appearances of this mode, but hey, I love some extra play value in a piece that I had already been enjoying for nearly 2 years. Why was this not in the instructions? Jhiaxus is one of my favorite releases from Legacy Year 1. The robot mode is wonderful, the transformation is entertaining to me in either direction, and the alt mode is absolutely adorable. He hits the classic Transformers trifecta, and it's astonishing to me that he remains the sole use of this mold to this day, that day being some Wednesday in late February 2024. Especially when there's not only a straightforward IDW orange direction to go for a redeco, but also because that would allow for a release that isn't at risk of the dreaded photo degradation of the early 2020s. While my copy seems fine so far, there are reports of some of Jhiaxus' white plastic doing that funny thing from the last few years in a greenish tint, according to the wiki. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and I'd like to give a nod to my swarm of Patreon patrons and YouTube members for always being there to help me achieve my own form of cellular budding month after month. You know, I have a lot of built-up headcanon around the Legacy line so far, and I had no idea that within a year of getting this guy, I'd receive his perfect partner, his Eye Bow, the other half of the Legacy Decepticon leadership.